Howdy, how are you? I just wanted to take a moment to record this moment for posterity and to offer some encouragement, speaking my thoughts out loud, more or less. And I'm on a hike, if you'd like to call it that. I'm walking in nature on an uphill incline. Here's the view behind me, if I can balance that right. This is the view in front of me, and I would like to reflect on just how important it is to realize, yet how elusive it is to recognize that joy is possible, joy is permitted, only yet always in the present waking moment. I want you to sit with that and really think about what that means, because on one level it does kind of make sense. I mean, everybody knows what time is, right? Do we understand time? What is the relationship between time and consciousness, between our past, present, and future selves? It's a bit of an odd concept, a weird idea to wrap your head around. We've got this sense of self, but only through subjectivity. We are subjected by others, by language. And we learn early on that to get anywhere, you have to be someone. And so through the relationship we establish with others, could be our parents, could be our classmates, could be our teachers, through the world at large, our relation with others is what determines in large part our relation to ourselves. In fact, what is the world if not the inverse of self? Now, things can get a little bit weird talking about this due to the nature of language. I don't know how much time you've spent reflecting on that, questioning what it means to be alive. I've had to, just out of sheer survival, dedicate quite a lot of time and energy into understanding the nature of isness, of this, of that. And on my journey, I've come to appreciate how indescribable the experience is, how ineffable the effing world is, how inexpressible this feeling, this inkling, this innermost desire, this intimation of self, of other, this differentiation and integration that's going on, the oscillation between the two of inward concentration and outward exploration, and vice versa. These dualities, inward, outward, self, other, right and wrong, feminine, masculine, even writing, speech, or digital analog, black and white, all or nothing thinking arises, if you take the scientific standpoint to be one of usefulness, of beneficial knowledge. All or nothing thinking arises because of the binary that exists in order to sustain consciousness, and depending on how theoretical you want to get, ideological fantasy. What I mean by that is, if I can scramble to cover my tracks and make sense of what I just said, I'm simply trying to gesture at this idea that binary thinking in some capacity is what enables consciousness to come forth from the natural world. Of course, these oppositions, these dualities are, strictly speaking, people disagree about what they are. Some people firmly stand on solid ground, saying that this fundamental dualism is what constitutes reality. Others take a more linguistic approach. They take an interest in representations and try to show how language is, well, what is language? How does it relate to what we call consciousness? How do you talk about language when you only have language? Language is a kind of piss poor way to communicate, but in many respects, it's the best we have, at least in our traditional way of thinking. But there's got to be other ways of knowing, right? Think about animals. They might not have the same cognitive capacities that enable humans to have abstract thinking, but they still have emotional valence that enables them to survive. Everything around me has survived. Even in death, matter survives. So, what is life after death except the continuation of a universal process that began long before I existed and will continue long after? That gets you thinking, how long does humanity have? How long does this God's green earth have before annihilation, before complete extinction, before the flame engulfs the fuel and reality itself goes to sleep? These are big questions. These are just questions that exist in my mind. They exist naturally and arise organically. They're just part of my lived experience due to the kinds of memories I have to sort through in order to make sense of anything. This is the level of thinking that I've felt is required in order to understand anything. Because once upon a time, what I thought to be capital T true, more real than any of this, turns out I changed my mind. I did the impossible. I didn't even realize that was in the cards. I didn't know that the world as I knew it could disappear in such a devastating, destructive, vanishing. And I was left with this feeling of lack, of loss. And it made me question, who am I? Where am I? What is this? How do I go about living? What does any of this mean? What's the meaning of it all? It is what it is. It is what it is. That's a realization that I've had to, it's a tautology, really. What does it mean to realize that it is what it is? On some level, that's, to express some kind of acceptance of what is, a giving up almost, of coming to terms with, of surrender. But even after it is what it is, what is it? The question still stands. There is no going back to how things were. And yet it feels like it's always been the case. And this is the moment in time I'm trying to communicate in which joy is readily accessible. Joy is impossible except right now, right here. Wherever you're watching this, whatever you're doing, whoever you are, even if you don't know the answer to any of those questions, that's okay. It's okay because let's pause and take a breath. Will you breathe with me? My imagination is so powerful, I can always consider what is missing. I can get caught up not in what is, but in the what if. I see potential. I recognize change. And in doing so, I'm kind of caught in a trap between who I am and who I'd like to be, even if I don't know who the hell either of those people are. I see the world, and I want change. It's not that the world is evil or that it's fundamentally flawed. Depending on how you define those terms, operational definitions and whatnot. What I'm interested in is, yes, I can recognize that there is suffering. And what can be done about this? What is suffering? A lot of spiritual teachers have thought about that over the years. A lot of people have considered, conceptualized, conversed, and come up with their best answers to the question, to the problem of suffering. What do I have to offer? I'm just some guy walking in a forest, rambling, holding a piece of technology. I don't even understand how this works, this screen. Do you understand how this screen is being broadcasted to you wherever you could be anywhere? If you have signal, if you have connection, of an unnatural kind. Wi-Fi, data, Bluetooth, Ethernet cable, whatever the means of transmission, of reception. How is this information being communicated? What physical processes enable this asynchronous, meaning not happening in real time, but kind of, on our own time. I'm filming this when I film it, and you'll watch it when you watch it. And yet, despite it not happening simultaneously, in a way, it is only being experienced simultaneously. That's kind of the strange predicament of reproduction. It's the same, but different. It's a replicate, a duplicate, a facsimile, yet it is indicative and conveys some similarity to the original. What is originality? What is origin? Where did we come from? How did all this get here? Well, what kind of answer do you want? I want an answer that enables me to enjoy life, to experience joy. I don't think that's prideful. I don't think that's sinful. I don't think that's wrong. How could it be evil to enjoy life? Well, enjoyment at the expense of others comes to mind. But what if that's not what I mean by joy? I mean pure, unadulterated joy. This feeling of deep emotional resonance, of love. It starts at the bottom, yet comes from above. Deep within my heart, yet transcendental. Joy is only yet always available. Now. What does that mean? Well, it means that, there's, a Christian idea that joy is a choice. Happiness is fleeting, but joy is a relationship, let's say. It's not a religion, it's a relationship. Let's take that line of thought and secularize it a bit. I do think there's some spiritual value in all of the world's traditions, but I am skeptical of fundamentalism, of religious extreme. I'm skeptical of extremism of all kinds, but I am a fan of radical thinking. Why is that a paradox? Well, I would say it's a complicated question. On some level, reality, the real, beyond language, is contradictory. It cannot be encapsulated by language. If you think about the idea of one, if one thing exists, then it has no way of viewing itself outside of itself. So really that one is none. But what is none? Zero. Well, 0 and 1. Well, that's 2. Well, that's 3, 4, 5. This is logic. The law of non-contradiction. But my first truth is the embrace of alienation. What do I mean by that? Well, everything is circular from a certain point of view, and yet the circular logic is structured in such a way as to erase itself. That's how ideology functions. That's how belief systems, that's how worldviews operate. They erase themselves in order to shed light on what else. So if every approach has a problematic, which focuses on some but necessarily cannot focus on all, and one is none, meaning that the very essence of being is nothingness. Again, these concepts are difficult to communicate, but a lot has been written philosophically, spiritually, about these insights, about the truth of non-self. I mean, if you want to talk about a walking contradiction, for so many years, my experience was that of a solipsist who didn't believe in a self. How do you account for that? And yet, here we are. Here we are. And here you are. It's okay if you don't know who you are. Everybody doesn't know who they are, really. I mean, it's kind of weird to assume a place of authority and say that to you as if I have the answer. I don't have the answers. I made all this up. Growing up, it's bullshit, but it's important. Grown-ups don't exist. We're all human. We're all just dynamic, temporal becomings in the process of biological, spiritual development. Why anything? Why bother at all? It's difficult sometimes when our social structures oppress certain people, when historical atrocities determine individual cultural outcomes. These are complex ideas and they're important to talk about. I don't have the answers. I would love to solve the world's problems, trust me. I want nothing short of world peace, of everyone having access to free, clean water, food as well. Why stop at water? We can do whatever we want. We can destroy ourselves. But there's two types of destruction. One is and the other is the destruction of life as we know it. But they're both the same. Isn't that strange? I'm being deadly serious right now. I know I can seem glib. I know this might not make sense. But as best I can tell, this is the truth. And here we are, back where we started. Joy is only yet always available in the present waking moment. That's right now. So what are you going to do? Well, I would encourage you to, stay hydrated, look after yourself, diet, exercise, outdoors, that's all important. Try to get in sync with natural rhythms, organic patterns. It's a learning process. There's a curve to it, but in due time, outcome will become what it is. What it always was. And that is to say, I hope you keep breathing. And as the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, aka Thay, would say, how long is a lifespan? A lifespan? It's one breath.